17 campaigns, and you never once let anyone patch you up. Not this time. Hold still.
The tunnel of the Meridian's Reach hummed with the low thrum of the engine core 3 decks below, a sound Sarah Venn had learned to trust more than silence. Silence meant something was wrong. The hum meant the ship was still alive, and so was she, barely. She had fought in 17 campaigns since the fall of Kesh, and in every one of them she had walked away on her own 2 feet, dragging the wounded, burying the dead, refusing the medics who trailed after her like nervous shadows. The Venkin did not accept help. Helping meant weakness, and weakness meant the coalition would stop trusting her blade. That was the code her mother had burned into her before the war took her mother too. But Campaign 18 had gone wrong from the first shot. The extraction had turned into an ambush in the ruins of Cashin Station, and by the time Sarah had cut a path back to the dropship, a fragment of shattered durasteel had opened her knee to the bone. She had walked 4 kilometers on it. She had held the line on it. She had not made a sound. Now, sitting against the curved wall of the transport corridor, her silver armor scorched at the shoulder and her braided white hair falling loose over one eye, she finally let herself stop. Sergeant Marcus Doss knelt in front of her without asking permission, which no one on this ship ever did. He was Coalition infantry, broad-shouldered, sun-worn, with tired brown eyes that had seen too many extractions go sideways. He set his medkit down hard enough that the clasps rattled. "Let me see it," he said. "It's fine, Sarah." He didn't look up. "It's not fine. You've been dragging that leg since the ridge." She opened her mouth to argue. The same argument she'd given 11 medics across 17 campaigns, but something in his voice stopped her. He wasn't asking like a stranger. He was asking like a man who had already decided he wasn't leaving. Behind them, down the long-ribbed corridor, Coalition soldiers marched past in formation, rifles slung, boots echoing off the metal floor, giving the 2 of them only a passing glance. Doss didn't turn to look at them. His hands were already unwrapping gauze, already reaching for her boot. "I've patched worse," he said. "Hold still." For the first time in longer than she could remember, Sarah Venn did. He worked in silence for a while, cutting away the ruined fabric around her calf, cleaning the wound with careful, practiced hands, wrapping fresh gauze tight enough to hold, but not tight enough to cut circulation. She watched his face instead of the wound, the small scar above his eyebrow, the tension in his jaw, the way his headset crackled faintly with chatter he was ignoring entirely because of her. "Why?" she finally asked. "Does this matter to you? I am not Coalition. I am not your responsibility." Doss glanced up at her, and something in his expression made the corridor feel smaller than it was. "Because you keep showing up to save the rest of us," he said, "and nobody ever stays behind to save you back." The words landed somewhere Sarah hadn't defended in a long time. She had led the charge at Halvern Ridge. She had pulled 3 burning pilots from a downed gunship over Threll. She had stood alone against a Kasari warwalker outside the Meridian gates until Command finally believed she wasn't exaggerating the threat. 17 campaigns of being the one who arrived, who fixed it, who bled quietly and never once let anyone see the cost. No one had ever knelt down and asked to see her wound. "You don't know what I am," she said quietly. "My people don't ask for help. We weren't built for it." "Maybe not." Doss tied off the last strip of gauze and sat back on his heels. "But you're not just your people right now. You're a person sitting in a hallway with a hole in her leg, letting me finish this conversation instead of walking off on it. That's new, isn't it?" She almost smiled. "Almost." "It is new," she admitted. Overhead, the ship's comm crackled. Command confirming they'd reached rendezvous coordinates, that the Meridian's Reach would dock at Station Aurelia within the hour. That command wanted a full debrief on Cashin the moment they landed. Ordinary noise. The war did not pause for two people in a corridor. But for a few minutes, it felt like it had. Doss reached into his kit and pulled out a small stim injector, checking the dosage twice before offering it to her rather than simply administering it. A small thing, but she noticed it. He was still asking, still letting her choose. "This will help with the swelling," he said. "Your call." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. This scarred, stubborn, quietly persistent man who had knelt in a war he didn't have to kneel in, and extended her arm. "Do it," she said. He did, gently, and then sat beside her against the wall instead of standing to leave, his shoulder nearly touching hers, both of them watching the tunnel stretch ahead toward the docking bay lights. 17 campaigns, he said eventually, and this is the first time you let someone help you. 18, she corrected, and it will not be the last. He looked at her, surprised, and she allowed herself, finally, the smile she'd been holding back. "You didn't ask if I needed help," she said. "You simply stayed. That is different from asking. That is why I let you." The Meridian's Reach shuddered gently as it began its final approach to Aurelia Station, engines singing steady beneath them, and for the first time since the war had taken everything else from her, Sarah then let herself rest, not because she had to, but because someone had finally earned the right to let her. Outside the viewport, Aurelia's lights bloomed gold against the dark, and neither of them moved to stand until the ship had fully docked.